Hello, everyone. Happy Halloween. It is October, just the greatest time of year. Can you tell I'm excited about it myself? So we're doing something a little fun, a little different. I don't do as many live streams as I probably should. I do have a lot of fun doing them. I just never make the time for them. This is something I wanted to do a year ago, and kind of we did some other things, but I'm finally going to do it now. I had the huge privilege of participating in the Tubi series. Famously Haunted. Their second installment came out last year, as you can see right here. Famously Haunted Hollywood. I'm part of that one, and obviously to be able to go on camera and speak about things, even though some of these are stories I've told many times. I wanted to be very prepared, so I went back. I took a lot of notes and I did additional research. I just wanted to be ready for everything and anything. And as happens, and if you haven't seen it, check it out. It's on Tubi, which is a free app, free website for streaming movies and shows. You don't even need to sign up for an account or download an app. It depends on what you're watching it on. But if you're watching it on your computer, you can just go to tubi.com and find it. And if you do a search for Famously Haunted, you'll see it pop up right there. That story, as you can see from right there, you see on the cover, Sharon Tate, Charles Manson, the Cecil Hotel, Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, and Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia. And that doesn't even touch on every story that we tell. In an hour and a half, they cover so many different great and macabre and dark parts of LA history. Truly, they did a great job. And I do have to shout out also Famously Haunted Amityville, which was the episode, if you will, the installment that came out the year before. So 2024, I think, or maybe 23 is when that one came out. They did an exceptional job with that as well. And I mean, they talk about stuff that I talk about and I go down the rabbit hole sometimes, all these deeper research type stuff. And they really handled the Amityville story extraordinarily well. So that gave me a lot more confidence that I was going to do it anyway, because it's always fun to be interviewed and to participate in anything in this world of the paranormal. And I love telling ghost stories. I love telling LA Haunted Hollywood ghost stories. So I was on board no matter what. But then when I see how well they put a story together with Famously Haunted Amityville, I was really on board. Before we jump into it, if you've never met me, my name is Scott Markus. whatsyourghoststory.com is my website. I have an approach to telling ghost stories, which I've been doing for now 26 years, that yes, these stories can become dark and scary, and a ghost story isn't a ghost story with somebody dying, unfortunately. So there can be a lot of darkness to them, but I like to try to approach things and tell stories from how amazing it is that we don't have all the answers to the world, that look how spectacular it is that somebody can make their presence known after death, or that this weird mystery is happening. Even a mystery, I think, is worth celebrating. And of course, telling stories, sharing stories, urban legends, even, it's all part of what makes culture, what makes places unique. And I try to come from an approach of celebrating that. Now, I say that as we're about to dive into the first story. And I'm not doing this in order of how everything is presented on the documentary, Famously Haunted Hollywood. I don't actually remember what the order is. So I'm just doing it based on my notes. And here are my notes. And so, yes, it's hard to get into the light and the inspiring of ghost stories by jumping into talking about Charles Manson. And we're not going to even try, because it's the Manson family. The Manson murders. I lived in Los Angeles for 8 years. Really love my time out there, and I go back very frequently. Oh, I wanted to actually start out by talking a little bit about the just the making of this documentary. Now, I was brought on board. I think a couple of people suggested me to the producers, and I believe that was Ursula Bielski, who is one of Chicago's great researchers and ghost storytellers, and also Mike Huberty, who runs American Ghost Walks, which is a tour company that has tours all over America and Puerto Rico. I mean, more than a dozen places across the country. Pretty awesome, honestly, that he's got so many different locations. And he's picked up my tour. I used to give a tour in downtown that went through. It actually picked up people. There's a bus tour, picked up people at the Formosa Cafe, went through downtown, especially Pueblo and some of the places that we're going to talk about today, like the Biltmore, and then went through downtown Hollywood, Hollywood Boulevard, and then ended back at the Formosa about 3 hours later. So yeah, Mike is somebody I'm working with. And I first was talking with the people that produced this documentary, and I'll just say that it wasn't initially going to be a city specific. It was going to talk about a certain type of location, and I'd be able to talk about places in Chicago and places in Hollywood. And also I was able to suggest different locations around the country, and then I connected them with the proper expert for those places. Like one was down in Arkansas, all over the place. And I'm just sharing that because they always say it's not what you know, it's who you know. In this business, storytelling, creativity, you have to know somebody to be on the inside, but it's also who knows you. And I just love being able to be that connector, to connect people, to give other people opportunities. Just like Mike and Ursula suggested me, I was then able to bring other people on board. They ultimately chose to keep costs down by just filming in one location, one city. It was Los Angeles. We shot in November of 2023, and I was out there, and they flew me out from the Midwest where I live currently, and I've got a lot of production experience. And I said, hey, I'm happy to help out on set, getting the B-roll of all of these locations as well, because I have a lot of experience. I could be an asset to you. And I, wasn't even looking for a job or anything, but just wanted to help out with the documentary. And they were completely on board. And then they realized that, this has been pushed back enough that now the places that we want to film at are all decorated for Christmas, and it's not exactly going to play as creepy as we want it to play. So I was not able to participate in shooting the B-roll, but just, again, a little bit more backstory, as now we will dive into Famously Haunted Hollywood. Taking a look at my notes, big time shout out to Scott Markus, who runs or ran Dearly Departed. He's got a great YouTube channel now and is just such an asset when it comes to talking about the history of LA and the dark history. I mean, he talks about a lot of stuff that is darker than I like to dive into. Obviously, I'm usually coming from a place of telling ghost stories as well, not just crime stories or not just dark curiosities. Not everything I do has to be a ghost story, but I tend to lean in that direction. But man, the weight was lifted off me when I realized that Scott Markus was involved, because he is such an aficionado, especially on the Manson murders, but on all things dark. And I knew that I'm not going to put as much pressure on myself to have all of the Manson stories inside and out. He is like the resource, I think, for that. And also, as we'll get into, the Night Stalker. I tried to become a bit of an aficionado on that, but his stories are so dark that once I realized Scott Markus was on board, I thought, I'm just going to let Scott handle those. That's more his wheelhouse anyway. But I mentioned Scott Markus right up front because I thought it'd be interesting to talk about Benedict Canyon a little bit, where the Omen House is, which is down the street, just 100 yards or so from where the Tate murders happened. Also, I have to remember, it was wild too. I've got to remember I'm on YouTube again. So there's certain words that I can't say, or YouTube will throttle how many people get and see this. I'm not monetized, so that's not an issue for me. But, certain words are trigger words. And I'm used to doing that so much that for this documentary, I had to like retrain myself to speak freely, to speak like a normal human being, not somebody that's self-censoring all the time. And I honestly, I was bad at that. But I bring up Scott Markus because right before I went out and did this interview, he told the story on his YouTube channel of Yvette Vickers, who appeared in Sunset Boulevard in Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, and that her body was not found for 6 months when she died in her home, not too far away, and she was fully mummified. And so I was going to try to talk a little bit about just how Benedict Canyon has a history of oddities and weirdness. And there's lots of stories, and right across the street, which is across the canyon, but you can see it, was Falcon's Lair, which is where Rudolph Valentino's house was. And there are all sorts of stories about Valentino's house being haunted by the people who owned it afterwards. And actually, they do have proof that a lot of those hauntings were completely faked, with rigs set to open doors and stuff like that. Really a strange story in and of itself, even though there wasn't probably a haunting there. However, on the street, Benedict Canyon, at street level, so we're talking right there, but down low, that's where Valentino had his stables, and people have all sorts of sightings of phantom horses. Even when Valentino, I believe, even when Valentino was there and he had his caretaker managing the horses, they would have strange hauntings at that time. So obviously we weren't able to get into this. When you're doing a documentary, when you're being interviewed, I should say, for a documentary, the producers and the directors have a very clear vision for what they need out of me, the interviewee. And so I'm not able to, it can be so stifling. Okay, rephrase it shorter, or just get to the point quick. You know, I like to be the storyteller that unveils things. Like, we don't need that, we need the sound bites. And I can be good at that when I need to, but you know, it's hit and go. It's a very different kind of thing, because you're not telling the whole story, you're just telling pieces of it. Yeah, so getting into Charles Manson, I haven't looked at these notes myself since I did the documentary, so I'm going to be kind of rereading these with you, and let's just see, why did I write this down? Arrived in California in the 60s, paroled in 67, relocated to San Francisco, murder by mind control, murder by proxy. So I guess these are little talking points. I do find that fascinating that Manson himself, and I said the M word, I don't know if I'm allowed to say that on YouTube. I find it fascinating that Manson himself, for the main killings, again, can I say that, that are attributed to the Manson cult, essentially, he was not there on hand for a lot of it. So just imagine the control that you have over people. Again, this is a cult. I don't think of this as a cult so much. I think of Manson as more in line with serial killers, but without a question, that's a cult leader. If he can get people to do these things for him, and he did, you know, he killed somebody prior to this batch. It was a drug deal gone bad. So he does have blood on his hands, quite literally, from the past. But the Tate LaBianca murders were definitely things where he was not the one doing most of the killing, but he was directing it all. So I find that fascinating. Oh, and I always find, I talked about this on my podcast, which is the Fantastic Story Society. Would you find a philosophy appealing that's crafted on a collection of messages from successful people like Andrew Carnegie, verses from the Bible, messages of peace from the Beatles, from Beatles lyrics, and even some future thinking taken from science fiction books? Because that is how Manson crafted his message to his followers. It sounds so positive, but this inspiration for Manson, you know, like verses from the Bible, that was actually about man's superiority over women. The future thinking taken from science fiction books, those were messages from L. Ron Hubbard's Dianetics. So again, it was about controlling people. Very often his inspiration was from controlling people, putting people down, breaking their free thought. It's and it's the same of all cult leaders. By the way, if anybody has questions at any time and you want me to talk about any topics, I don't have to be on that topic. Just throw questions in. And if you're watching this on a replay later, leave comments and I will get to questions when I can. But let's see. So August 9 and 10, when you're doing the documentary, you know, you want to have certain facts and figure kind of things at the tip of your fingers. It's stuff that I don't necessarily remember immediately. So August 9th and 10th, Manson murders. Manson himself was not arrested until August 12th. And yeah, he wanted to inspire a race war. Let's see. Oh yeah, so here we go, talking about the Bible stuff. Nancy Maddox, Manson's grandmother, fundamentalist Christian. Ada Kathleen. So Nancy was the one that was taking little Charles Manson, to church. And that's where he was exposed to some Old Testament stuff. Ada Kathleen, Manson's mom, once traded him for a pitcher of beer. And it took days to relocate her and return the baby. The waitress thought it was a joke, but then she went back to check on the table and Ada was gone and the little baby was left behind. And she literally did try to trade him for a case of beer, a pitcher of beer. By age 19, he spent the last 7 years in 6 different reform schools. He could manipulate reform school administrators into getting more favorable accommodations. So again, certain words I can't say. Yeah, it was a very dark upbringing. And, we think about John Dillinger as well, that he was a punk criminal until he went to prison and learned how to become a professional criminal. Let's see. Yeah, it's kind of funny to remember, not funny, but that he had over 100 followers. We always think about, or we always hear about the dozen or so people that did the really darkest of dark deeds, but he had a lot of followers. Yeah, give up your belongings and your inhibitions. He used the idea of free love, the free love era, to also bring an end to it. I do find it there's so many different aspects of Manson that's fascinating. The fact that he has that Beach Boys connection. Let's move on. Prophecy, an uprising of oppressed races would break out, and their clan would find a bottomless pit in Death Valley where they would live in an underground city. This was the plan. They wouldn't, the minorities couldn't possibly reestablish civilization, the superior Manson thought. That's when the Manson group would reemerge and become leaders of the rebuilding society. The White Album in 1968 filled with allusions to the upcoming race war. Listen, if you are trying to see something, you're going to find it. That's where you got the Helter Skelter ideas from. All right, so I'm going to move forward through a lot of this as I'm kind of going through all of this. So also, I was thinking that this would be a document that one day I'll publish a Patreon, and members would be able to download this and take a look at all of this information. As you see, how many notes I took on the Manson murders, because this is something that I'm aware of. I've been to the La Bianca grounds. I've been, I haven't been on site of the Tate house because it's been gone for a long time, but I have been at the Omen House. And I guess I'll just skip through a lot of this and get to what we cover at the in the documentary, which is the Omen House, which is here. Let me go. We have the power. It's the fact that I know this off the top of my head. 10050 Cielo Drive. I don't know why the word now popped up. I've been to the Omen House, which is, like I said, just down the street from where the Tate La Bianca murders happened. And okay, so here we go. Down here is this was the site. Obviously, has been bulldozed and rebuilt as this gargantuan. Look how big that is. Beautiful, ostentatious, maybe house. We have no idea the current owners. I've never heard anything about them talking about the history of the place, if there is any activity at it. And by the way, look at this thing being built behind it, just bigger and bigger and bigger. That looks like a resort, like in Vegas. So the Omen House is one of these houses here. It's a private home, so I don't want to zoom in on it so much, but right across this valley here is where Falcon's Lair was. So Valentino's house is right here. And when I say down, way down at street level, I'm talking about way down here is where the stables were for Valentino's horses, where people had reported paranormal activity from a long time ago. So the house here, as we talk about, I mean, Barry Taft talks about it. Ghost Adventures has done stuff here. I can say just completely honestly, this place is weird. I absolutely had experiences there from the very first day I set foot on the property. The owner invited me over twice. I was at the house before he opened it up. They now do tours, sometimes through American Ghost Walks, AmericanGhostWalks.com, if you're interested in looking into that. And I don't talk about this publicly too much because, again, it's a private home and it just feels a little bit inappropriate. But hey, it's on this documentary, so I have freedom to talk about it. David, the owner, gave us a tour of the top floor, which when you're coming in from this side, the street side is it's ground level on this side, but on the back side is the top level of 3 stories. And it was completely just normal. It was just a normal house. He walked me through where different things have happened, where this area, he's got action figures, Beetlejuice specifically action figures, and they tend to be thrown around or fall down on their own. Little things happen here or there. And he gave us the story. We went through the top floor. Oh, and the thing that will always stick with me is when I was first there, he had a puppy that had that puppy rambunctious energy, just jumping all over you, so excited that there's people visiting. And he was, all over us as we walked around the top floor and then the second floor. And then we went down the spiral staircase into the lowest level. And the dog would not come with, which I always pay attention to what animals are doing. It might sound cliche a little bit that that animals pick up on things that we don't, and they can sense things, but I'm telling you, that's legit. There's something to that. Whether you want to say that's spiritual, supernatural, or something else, that's up for debate. But this dog would not come with us to the lowest level. And as soon as I went down there, I felt a pressure on my head as if I was diving deep underwater. So much pressure that at times I had to hold on to the wall because I was getting dizzy. Very unusual. I oftentimes if I'm having I'm feeling something, I'm sensing something, and I'm not really big in tune to the psychic abilities, but hey, we all pick up on things. I usually don't say anything for a while because I don't want to create this yes and mass hysteria that sometimes can happen when you're with a couple of people at a haunted place. You say something and then someone builds on it and then it gets a little bit out of control. By the way, for all the people joining, I see more numbers coming in. If you haven't seen it yet, check out Famously Haunted Hollywood on Tubi. Free to watch. Really well done documentary. I'm going through some of my notes of things I didn't get to talk to on camera. And right now we're talking about the house that's just down the street from where Sharon Tate, Abigail Folger, Wojciech Frykowski, so many people, Mark Parent, met their end. Also down here, I was able to see this with my own eyes, or I may not have believed it so much, but holding a regular old-fashioned compass. So not something on a phone, nothing digital, but an actual compass. It would literally spin when you were down there, and it wouldn't be consistent. Sometimes it would spin, sometimes it would point one direction, sometimes it would point another direction. There is crazy stuff going on energetically down here. And according to Barry Taff, he was an important part, he was the founding member of UCLA's parapsychology department. He said this area is a known geomagnetic anomaly area where naturally there's high amounts of energy coming up from the earth. And these houses, as you see, they are anchored in the side of this really steep cliff. There you can kind of get some perspective on how steep this hillside is. They have all of these rods that have to go deep into the ground to anchor those houses in so they don't tumble down. And this is an area of an old lava flow, an ancient lava flow. And that energy naturally is just coming up like antennas through these houses. We hear so much about the Omen House because David is good at getting the word out and celebrating what weirdness is happening at his house. I've never heard anything about these other houses. Are they also haunted? They should be. And I think the thing that's fascinating, even according to David, is it's not necessarily the house that's haunted. It's everybody comes in with our own energies, with our own spirit guides, with our own maybe past loved ones who are quietly hanging around, and they step into a place like this that is so energetically charged. Now it's very easy to manifest or to make their presence known. So they take advantage of that. I love that idea. I love that theory a lot. Now, David has said that it got so extreme once that when somebody came into the house, whatever they brought with them flipped a couch in the living room. Talk about a lot of energy, among the most extreme types of physical objects moving I've ever heard of before. But I will say, so I went to this house the first time and I had this experience. I came back again later, and I don't remember if this footage, I shared this footage with the documentary. I don't know if it made it in or not, but among the people I brought back was Max Tim, who's my co-host on the Fantastic Story Society, and also Mary Serwinski. Now, Mary was my partner, research partner when I was writing a book on haunted Chicago back in the early 2000s. She is somebody that lives in downtown Chicago. I was from the suburbs, so she was definitely my Sherpa through the city. But also, she just knew a lot of information about the history and hauntings of Chicago. And so I brought her into this place. And by this point, many, many years had passed since I wrote that book. And Mary had started to lean way, way, way more skeptic than believer. And I just knew she would find this area interesting on her own. She's a fan of LA history as well. And, the connection to the Manson murders, it's just a curiosity. The skeptic, went down. We did the same tour, first floor, second floor, getting into that basement level. I walked in, and this time I did not feel that pressure, but she walks into the room. And as soon as she walks into the room, she is physically pushed down against the side of a recliner chair and freaks out. She's like, oh my God, something pushed me. Something really pushed me. And I was rolling video at the time, and I panned over to her. And I think after a moment, Mary, who's still a good friend, the skeptic, Mary, realized that she was on camera having this paranormal experience. And so she left the room quickly. But that's something that will always stick with me. Like, legitimately, that place has activity. It could be natural. It could be spiritual. It could be earth science. It could be a combination of a whole bunch of things. But to me, without question, that is a haunted house. So yeah, I don't know if there's any tours going on right now, but if you're interested in touring that house, it'd be AmericanGhostWalks.com. Okay, so Cecil Hotel. The Cecil Hotel. Now, I'm so grateful that I was asked to be part of this documentary, and I'm also grateful that they literally have me speaking on every story within the documentary. I wish I was part of the Cecil story more, because I've got so many of my own stories, not personal experiences, but I do have a lot of stories of my own that I can share. And it didn't come through on the documentary, and that's why we're doing this here. So Cecil Hotel opened in 1924. It was kind of the blue collar counterpart to the more lavish, luxurious Biltmore Hotel, not too far away, just a few blocks away. Let's lean on this map. I like doing this way. So the Cecil, unfortunately, their timing was really bad. The Great Depression happened not long after it was built. Here we go. So weird. Apartment 302 came up when I just tried to put in Cecil Hotel. What was there? Was that Richard Ramirez's room? Okay, so there's the Biltmore. Found that before I found the Cecil. So really quickly, let's get back to my notes really quick. So the word I'm not going to say, because we're on YouTube, people not being kind to themselves, people saying goodbye to a future, did start pretty quickly in 1927 and again in 1931, but most of this happened in the 40s and 50s. So not directly so much tied to the Great Depression. Now, if you want those types of stories, go no further than the Colorado Street Bridge in Pasadena, where, wow, I'm not even going to get into it here. I've got other videos on that. So we do know that this has happened at least 13 times here, but very likely more. And I'm going to tell you right now, I was giving tours here. I launched my tour company. I can't even remember what year it was, 2000. Well, let's see. When did Elisa Lam happen? Because I started doing tours. Okay, went missing in 2013. So I was giving tours in 2012. End of 2012 is when I started giving my tours around LA. And I talked about the fact that this is associated with the hotel and on the tour. And I had a mom and daughter visiting from Canada. And sometimes we would always end the tour after a while at the Formosa Cafe. And sometimes if it was the last tour of the night, I would go in, hang out with people and mingle. And the mom came up to me and she kind of apologized for her daughter, that her daughter was being so standoffish and distant. And for me, I was giving a tour. I was very occupied with everybody else and what I was doing and driving the van. So I didn't notice at all. But I said, oh, well, that's fine. Is she okay? And she said, we did this tour because I think she was 13 or so. She is having experiences. She might have a gift that she's kind of afraid of. So I wanted to take her on this tour to show her that, hey, this is part of the world. It's part of life. This is a thing that happens. It's nothing to be ashamed of or afraid of, but you have to get comfortable with it. So doing this tour, maybe it wasn't the right route, but doing the tour was a way to hopefully make her feel comfortable with it. And then I pulled up to the Cecil Hotel, which is where they were spending the night. Whoops. Kind of funny walking in Elisa Lam's steps in some ways, because they came down from Canada, not knowing the Cecil Hotel is such a rough place in a rough neighborhood with a rough history. Just like what happened to Elisa Lam. And if you don't know who Elisa Lam is, I'm going to get to that quickly. But I said that this place had this big history of people harming themselves. And that's when she shut down, because they went to their hotel room. The first time they checked in, they get the key, they go up to the room, they open the door. The mom walks in like nothing. The daughter stands at the door, the threshold to the door, and she said, "Someone themselves here." She said it, she didn't mime it. And the mom was trying to like, "Oh, don't worry. No, it's just a bad feeling or something." But no, she knew that somebody had done that in that room. And then we find out, they came and find out that, oh yeah, this is a common thing here. And so it really validated her experience. Pretty amazing. So this place was already on my tour even before the big news that started to unfold while I was giving the tour, because it's the site of, okay, well, first off, it was on the tour because, so my background is I work in production. I work in film production, camera operator, assistant director. Usually one of those two things. Very different skills, but I like doing both of those. And I would have a lot of people come to me, production people come to me and say, once they find out that I'm the ghost story nerd, do you know anything about the Cecil Hotel? Like, at that time I was new to LA. I'm like, no, why are you asking? Like, well, we were shooting an independent film here, and we just constantly felt like there was somebody not only in the room with us, but also like unfriendly in the room with us, sizing us up, making us feel intimidated or uncomfortable. And I had multiple people coming to me saying that. I'm like, well, okay, I don't know. At that time, I didn't know anything about the place, but different people, unconnected people are telling me this. So there must be something going on. And when you're shooting an independent film, you're often doing it without a permit. You're going to wherever you can cheaply get a place. And the Cecil Hotel is a place where you could rent a room by the hour at this time, or, for just like $20 a night or something like that. Because it's Skid Row. It's right on Skid Row. I mean, it's literally, the neighborhood is Skid Row. I always like to show the distance between these two buildings, because you have it couldn't be more upper class, high end, the Biltmore, and then it couldn't be more rough, the Cecil Hotel. So here we go, just about a half mile away from each other. So here it is now. It's been rebranded. It used to have the big, I can't believe they painted over it. I mean, I know they want to get away from their past image. It was the Cecil Hotel for the longest time. Then it became the Stay on Main. Last I heard, it's not really open for hotel stays anymore, but it's like government assistant housing. So, but yeah, they put a heart on it, so it's nice now, right? So looking into the history of the Cecil, you have, first and foremost, the headline that always comes out, other than the main one, is the Night Stalker lived here. Richard Ramirez was one of the just most brutal, satanic people ever. And I'm saying satanic, not in any kind of an over-the-top way. He was a Satanist. And I know a lot of people, and by the way, as I said before, if you want to leave comments or questions, please do so at any time at all. Even if it's off topic, I'm happy to respond. Every serial killer had a bad upbringing, let's be honest. And you don't want to totally just let them off the hook because of that, because other people have had bad upbringings and they didn't become a serial killer, right? And I'm not going to make excuses for Richard Ramirez, because he was one of the most awful people, I believe, who ever lived. I mean, ugh. Okay, so his crime spree took place June 84 through August 85. That's a small window, but he did so much in that time. Sentenced to death in 89, but then California abolished the death penalty, and he just wasted away. Oh, actually, he died awaiting execution in 2013. I can't remember when they got rid of the death penalty. I thought it was before 2013. Let me see. He was beaten to death, nearly to death, several times by his abusive father by the age of 6, which may have had a hand in creating a temporal lobe epilepsy. He got into drugs and alcohol by age 10. By age 12, he was taken under the wing of his, older cousin, Miguel Ramirez, who was also a serial killer. I'm not a big expert. I'm still not a big expert on Richard Ramirez, but I never knew that. That was mind-blowing to me, that his cousin who raised him was also a serial killer. So, of course, he's got and plus some sort of brain damage caused by beatings at a young age. Okay, so yeah, his cousin was a serial killer who committed war crimes in Vietnam. By age 13, little Richard Ramirez was present to see his cousin kill his wife by shooting her in the face. Yes. So by 14, he was using LSD and became interested in Satan worship at that time. So, okay, how does he not become a serial killer? But he doesn't just become a serial killer. He's just one of the most brutal people ever. And I thought, to be able to speak on this topic for the documentary, I need to have a timeline for myself of what he did. On this day, he did this, and this is where his life of crime went. I'm not going to read this off because it went on and on and on. I could not believe the brutality of the things he did. And eventually, as you see, I just put much more. Like, I'm not going to get it. There's no way I'm going to be able to talk about all this. But it was good for me as the interviewee to get a better picture of just how brutal this guy was. If you want to read this, you can pause the video and go back. But I didn't want to get into this. Yes, but I did want to make sure I at least jump to the final victim. Richard Ramirez identified himself as the Night Stalker and forced a victim to swear that she loved Satan as he beat her. Demanded cash and jewelry, made her swear on Satan before leaving the home. He told someone, tell them the Night Stalker was here. So what an insanely dark, troubled person. And then it really goes on and on also. Just how, like, into the court case, how despicable he was even then. And why are we talking about him with the Cecil Hotel? Well, he lived here for at least a portion of the time that he was committing these crimes. Jump ahead a little bit to a guy named Jack Unterweger, who was a Austrian serial killer, and he had been convicted of crimes in Europe. So 8 victims in Europe, at least 3 more in Los Angeles. He stayed at the Cecil in 1991. Why? Well, let's see. First, how did he get out of jail after he had been convicted of killing 8 people? Well, he became a writer. And not only did he write, but he wrote like happy children's plays that became popular, and the kids would put on. Could you imagine your child putting on a play at school and then finding out that a serial killer who murdered prostitutes by strangling them with their own undergarments? Those are the words that are being performed by your kids. But he gained such popularity through his writings that people petitioned for him to be set free, including powerful people, and he was set free. And then began a journalistic career. And he thought, well, what better to do than to write about crime in the City of Angels? So he came to Los Angeles. He stayed at the Cecil Hotel to stay where Richard Ramirez was staying. And then he picked up where he left off. He also went back to murdering, a crime spree. And while he was doing that, he was doing ride-alongs with the LAPD. So, and I'd love to find out specifics. Did he ever do any ride-alongs with people that were actually investigating his crimes? I don't have any proof that ever happened, but I mean, if that was going to be dramatized for TV, you would be definitely doing that. And so Jack Unterweger, he eventually was found out. There was a nationwide manhunt They caught him, I believe, in Miami, but and then he ended up taking his own life as he awaited trial by hanging himself with his own undergarments. So it really came full circle. He stuck with what he knew worked. But then we jump ahead. So I launched my tour company in 2012, and I've got plenty to talk about when talking about the Cecil Hotel. Between, like, is it the only place in the world where two different serial killers lived and worked? Oh, and I should mention, because I always want to give a shout out to the East Siders. Richard Ramirez, he was eventually found out, and he was captured in the Boyle Heights neighborhood after he was trying to carjack someone. But the Boyle Heights residents came out and beat the hell out of him. The police had to eventually come to save his life. I don't think they really realized that they were beating up the Night Stalker. They just knew that here's somebody trying to carjack one of our neighbors. And so let's go and get in the way of this. Oh yeah, here's some fun facts. There's a lot more that I'm probably not even getting into. But while awaiting trial, Ramirez reportedly met actor Sean Penn, who was jailed for 33 days in 87 for reckless driving and assault of an extra on Colors, 1988 film, received a letter from Ramirez as a fellow inmate, to which he wrote back telling Ramirez he had no sympathy and hope he died in the gas chamber. I'd never heard that before. Again, lots of interesting tidbits, lots of facts, fun facts. Okay, so I launched my tour company in October, September, maybe August of 2012. I was already going to the Cecil Hotel regularly, and then news started to break that there was a resident who was last known to be staying at the Cecil Hotel who was gone missing, and she was missing for a little while. And then we get this horrific news that she was found. She was in the water tank of the Cecil. And that's why we'll pop back over to here. And here are those water tanks on the roof here. And that, yeah, I mean, as grisly as it can be, maintenance went up there because the residents were talking about the strange discolorations and smells and tastes of their drinking water. The water that they're using to brush their teeth in, what's going on with those tanks. And that's when they discovered that, oh, there's a body in here wasting away. Obviously now police know where this missing girl has appeared. And as I alluded to earlier, Elisa Lam, E-L-I-S-A, was a Canadian foreign exchange student, came down to Los Angeles. She was staying at the Cecil Hotel. She went missing, stopped communicating with her family back home. Some of the last footage of her was at the Last Bookstore, which is nearby, one of the coolest stores in all of LA. And then, so now once they find her body, they start going back through the hotel's security footage because they thought maybe something happened to her out and about somewhere in LA, but no, she ended up right where she was staying. So they go through the hotel security camera footage and they find the last publicly known video of her, and it is her in an elevator. Do I just show it here? I guess I might as well, because it's public, it's out in the open. And I always say that it's some of the oddest, most unusual video, strange video you will ever see. And there's nothing grisly about it. Boy, there's a lot of videos out there. But pass an ad here, and I'll bounce out until the ad's over. Here we go. We see Elisa Lam walk into the elevator. She's acting kind of odd right off the bat. Why is she pushing all those buttons? That doesn't make sense if she's just going up to her room. And she's hanging out. I think she walks in very comfortably, relaxed. And even standing there, she seems kind of chill. But now, as you see, her attitude is different, very different. She looks out. She's now hiding. What is going on? Is she hiding from somebody? And also, the big question to me is, why aren't those doors closing? We see again, she's just really sneaking. She's not making herself as small as she first did when she first darted her head out there. Now she comes completely out. She's acting so strangely. I'm going to scroll a bit more. She seems to be having a conversation, possibly with somebody just off site. And the first question everybody always asks was, what was she on? What kind of drugs. She was not on any narcotics, any psychedelics. She didn't have alcohol in her system at all. It's important to note also, though, that she was under medicated for some psychological issues. But still, this is still completely strange. Okay, and here we go. We see she's having a big animated conversation. And again, the thing I always have to come back to is, okay, let's say she's just having a psychotic break or something, which I think is the most grounded idea. Why isn't the elevator closing? Is there somebody else out there pushing the button, like the call button, that will not let it close? Anyway, yeah, this is 2.5 minutes of just strange behavior, and she walks away. The full video shows that full video then just shows the elevator going up and opening the doors at all the different rooms that she hit the buttons for. Very, very, very strange. So, when I was giving my tours, I would always, and so again, it was so wild that this story was breaking as I was giving the tours, and I was able to say, like, okay, well, here's what we found out today. Here's what we found out today. It was an unfolding story, kind of wild to be in the heart of it like that. Not that I was involved. I don't want to overstate, but just to be on site as this mystery is unfolding, and it's just so much in the public mind and space at that time. I did a documentary a while back about La Crosse, Wisconsin, and a series of unsolved deaths that have gone on up there. It's a drowning in the Mississippi River. Let's go ahead and open up another one of these. In La Crosse, Wisconsin, Mississippi River, a number of people have drowned in the same area, and it happens so frequently. And also the victims are generally of the same makeup. They are young, athletic, college-aged males, historically. So people have died so regularly there, all fitting the same general description, that twice the FBI has investigated looking for a serial killer. Both times they said, no, there's nothing to substantiate a serial killer theory. But I mean, that's how regular it is that the FBI was looking into it. So they usually go in off of Riverside Park. And I know there's a lot of Native American lore about where rivers convene, I should say. And here we do have 3 rivers matching up right here. And there's also a history of tragedy in the area. There was very famous, the steamship, the War Eagle, caught fire actually up in this area, was pushed off so that the fire wouldn't spread. It actually did spread. A lot of buildings burned up here. Then the steamliner, the ship, the boat went down, taking a number of people with it. Not too far south from here was the final battle of the Black Hawk War, the Battle of Bad Axe, which was not a battle. It was a slaughter. There was only women and children left. All the warriors, all the guys were away. So it was completely just a horrible bloodbath. So there's a lot of dark history here that we know about. Why are people going in the river and drowning right here? Again, I've done an 1.5 hour long documentary about it. I'm not going to go fully into it, but something that was very interesting to me was that now it's such a phenomena that they have people stationed out here to catch people that might be going into the river. And many times, and again, and not again, but I haven't said this yet, who it was that requested a paranormal investigation of this area was the town's deputy coroner, the man of science, who is saying, none of this makes sense. Why are all of these people dying here? And the one thing that they've never looked into before was a possible paranormal influence. So I found that to be fascinating and definitely worthy of a documentary. So meeting with the people that run Project Riverwatch to try to keep this town safe, they said that they would interact with people who were in a daze, almost like a zombie-like state, walking directly into the river. Because not everybody that went in died, but the coroner, he only deals with the bodies. So he's never actually talked to witnesses before, people that have gone into the river and survived. And so we were really surprised and amazed to find out that there seemed to be people that somehow are in a trance-like state that are then, going on this death march to do harm to themselves. And I don't know, I can't watch that Elisa Lam footage at the Cecil Hotel without wondering, is there something similar going on with her? We don't have any answers. And I think that's the thing that's always most disturbing to me, is that idea that can a supernatural influence be strong enough that it would override your core just life, your core instinct to take care of yourself. And the answer is we don't know. And I think that alone is really disturbing. I've been going for 50 minutes already, and we're only through 2 stories. Oh yeah, mentioned the film Dark Water. Again, there's just so many weird facts connected to the Cecil, connected to Elisa Lam, connected to the Night Stalker, including the movie Dark Water, which is an interesting supernatural movie starring Jennifer Connelly. If you're into ghost story movies, it's worth watching. And you would assume that the story of Elisa Lam at the Cecil was inspired the movie, but the movie came out first. The daughter's name is Cecilia. There is a ghost story that involves a woman in the water tank. There's all of these strange little coincidences. And one of the most mind-blowing coincidences to me, not about the movie, right after Elisa Lam passed away, there was a tuberculosis outbreak among the homeless population of Skid Row, which is right there around the Cecil Hotel. And the medical testing kit they use to determine if you have tuberculosis or not is called the Lam Elise kit. Her exact name, just last name first, coincidentally. I mean, there's no connection there, but what a weird sign from the other side. If you believe in signs and things like that, it's just, if nothing else, it's an insane coincidence. Also, getting back to Richard Ramirez, I didn't realize until I was doing some of this research, I think it was when I was doing this, that they had to pause the trial because one of the jurors was murdered during the trial. And it was a domestic abuse issue. A woman was murdered, and her husband, his name was Cecil. Again, just another coincidence. But just like doing the documentary, there's so many strange coincidences that one coincidence alone is just an interesting fact, just a brain teaser or whatever. But when you start to have thing after thing after thing after thing, there's so much going on that, like, well, this can't all be coincidence at a certain point. Okay, moving on to the Biltmore Hotel, one of my favorite places in all of LA, a beautiful building. Let's head on over from the Cecil Hotel to the Biltmore as we see it hiding back here next to Pershing Square. This used to be the front entrance back here. Now it's the back entrance. If you go into the lobby, I wonder, can we see, does anybody do a, here we go. Oh, this is actually the, what is now the front lobby. And this is where the Ghostbusters captured Slimer. You can see this ceiling very clearly in Ghostbusters. Just such a beautiful place. Can we walk around? Yes, it's very cool that they've done the 360 walkthrough. The bar is over here. I guess they didn't do it very much. The bar is just the door down this way. This whole area is used in filming a lot, which I always like to point out because I'm a nerd for that kind of stuff. The amount of movies is crazy. And hey, Taylor Swift released a new album this weekend. We can mention that Taylor Swift shot a music video right here in this hallway. The bar, though, I wanted to point out because that is where most of the hauntings that I'm aware of have happened. Now, people have claimed stuff throughout the building, usually connected to the Black Dahlia. And the Black Dahlia, Elizabeth Short, 1947, a troubled young woman. The last time she was ever seen alive was in this hotel. Again, let me see. And then in what was the front lobby, here we are. Beautiful. Look at this place. And you can tell it's grand just looking on the computer screen, but when you're there, it's breathtaking. It is such a beautiful, beautiful place. Down here, this is where, when there were front desks down here, this is where Eddie Murphy tried checking in and conned his way in oh my gosh, Beverly Hills Cop. One of my favorites as a kid growing up, Beverly Hills Cop. But down here is where Elizabeth Short was last seen. There was a bank of phones, which we believe was in this area where my cursor is here. They're not there anymore. Obviously, you don't need payphones anymore. uh, having frantic phone calls. And then she gets into a car that comes and picks her up, not seen again. A week later or so, her body is found in Leimert Park, cut in half, and her body completely disfigured. She was very, very, this is a not a kids friendly live stream in case you haven't been able to tell by now, but she was obviously tortured before being killed. I really love with paranormal investigation, the idea at least that perhaps we could go to a place like this, go to where the phones were, let a voice recorder run, maybe try an EVP session, or at least just record the open space, and maybe we'll be able to capture a little bit of that phone call. Just a word or two, maybe something Elizabeth said that could help us now understand what happened, who she was talking to, what she was talking about, anything that could be a little bit of a clue that we didn't have yet. Because her death is one of the most famous in history. Again, on the front, the poster image here, she's in the bottom right there. There is Elizabeth, looking beautiful as she was before she was then completely disfigured and tortured. I would love for there to be some sort of justice for her, but we're never going to find out. I hate to say it. As things stand right now, I think paranormal investigation is the only possible way to get new clues at this point. Is again, 1947 was when she was killed. So, going through some of the claims from the Biltmore. So first off, built in 1923. Just what did I say? 24, I think, was the Cecil Hotel. The Gold Room was a speakeasy during Prohibition. We talked to somebody on staff, I think, who said that there was a code. If you go into the elevators, you could hit a code that would open a secret compartment, even within the elevator, to be able to get some illegal booze right then and there. There's an apparition of a man in a tuxedo and beard with a girl photographed in the Crystal Ballroom, 1920, or in the second floor. World War II era nurse scene. 9th floor, a little girl. 10th floor, ghost of a little boy. The lobby, 10th and 11th floors. That's where people claim to see somebody that resembles Elizabeth Short. Now, to me, because I know that she was not well off in life, and she dated guys who were in active service, active duty in the military. So she wasn't, trying to date high-end people who would spring for a room at the Biltmore. I kind of doubt she was staying there. Something brought her there. I mean, there was a bar there. Currently, there's a martini that you could order called the Black Dahlia. So I'm really dubious about the idea that she's seen on the 10th and 11th floors. I think, as you can see here, maybe it's just some other woman from the 1940s or early 50s or even 30s, and people are misidentifying what the style is. And then the weirdest one, the roof, a faceless boy is seen on the roof. I was very happy to share a personal story. Again, not a personal experience, but a story that I found myself. I was with my puberty at the time and my wife. And hey, there's a ghost in this photo. Look at this guy. Must have had a long shutter. There's totally a staff member there. This guy is completely opaque. Why is this guy see-through? What did we just find? Adam Hoke. Okay, cool. Curiosity. I was actually over here with Wendy and Mike, and we were talking to a member of the staff, and we asked, does she have any ghost stories of her own? And she did not, but she said, oh, a friend of mine does. And she related the story that does appear in the documentary, that one of her coworkers was, walking down a hall, and they saw a little boy, a small child, on their own. And they had a little pleasantry conversation, and then they went their separate ways. And he kind of realized after he left that, like, oh gosh, I should have been a better caretaker, because that kid was too young to be on their own. So I'm going to go to the security room and just make sure that they made it back to their room okay. I'll find him on the security cameras and follow him, make sure he's safe. And he gets to the security room, and they pull up him having this conversation, but there's nobody there. There's just the video of this guy talking to no one, crouched down on his leaning on his knees, talking to someone who isn't there. So that, I love that. And I love finding those stories. I love sharing those stories. And then, you know, I had Mike, Wendy, and we had a conversation with a staff member, and that could have ended right there. But now I've been able to retell that story and share that story. And then it gets onto this documentary. Now everybody's heard that story. And it's neat. As a storyteller, you want things to get out there. And I know, I guess deep down, I'll know that I was, you know, myself and my friends, we were the ones to discover that story, and it'll be retold later and we won't get credit for it, but it'll go out there. It'll exist onto, you know, into history, into the future. And that's kind of cool. Let's see, the Biltmore. So I find this pretty fascinating. Param Hunsha Sa Yogananda was an Indian Hindu monk, yogi, guru, who introduced millions into meditation and yoga. He is somebody that consulted with the Beatles when they were really getting into that as well. He knew he was going to die. He had this premonition. I don't know if it was a premonition. Like, I don't think he saw his death, but he just had this knowing that the end was coming soon. And he was speaking at the Biltmore. And so, yeah, he began hinting to his disciples that it was time for him to leave this world. March 1952, he attended a dinner for a visiting Indian ambassador to the U.S. at the Biltmore. At the conclusion of the banquet, he spoke of India and America, their contributions to world peace and human progress, their future cooperation, expressing hope for a united world that would combine the best qualities of efficient America and spiritual India. After reciting a poem, he slumped to the floor, and as his disciples describe it, the yogi's consciousness simply left his body. So what a mic drop, peace out moment. He knew that the end was coming. He shared this message of peace and hope for the future, and he just stops being alive, basically, right then and there. And that's not even me trying to get around saying he died on YouTube. But and so that place where he passed is now considered holy land for his parishioners, and he still does have a presence in among followers around the world, but especially in Los Angeles. And the place where he had a big compound, just going down the rabbit hole of LA history, was originally Innsville. If you know of Thomas Ince, one of the most amazing pioneers of film pioneers, he created the job of the screenwriter. He created producer, set deck. He took it from being a director does everything to, hey, let's create different roles and we can make stuff more efficiently. And he's the guy that brought film into Culver City, Culver Studios. That was his production. But before he was there, he was in a place called Innsville, where he built this huge, several 100-acre production studio, essentially, where everything was on site. And after Ince left, it probably sat vacant for a long time. But this yogi that's where he then reestablished himself. He took over that land and then set up his spiritual center there. Okay, pardon me. Black Dahlia, we talked about her a bit. Something that I wanted to get into, and there just wasn't time on this documentary, was that there was a cat and mouse thing going on with the killer and the police, which I don't want to say never gets talked about, but when you're telling Elizabeth Short's ghost story, you don't really, unfortunately, people tend to focus on how horrific the crime scene was where her body was found. And then you start to guess about who the possible killers could be and things like that. And that usually ends up being what the conversation is. But I think it's amazing that, almost like the Zodiac killer, the press and police were being contacted by somebody who's claiming to have been the killer. So January 21, 1947, a person claiming to be Short's killer placed a phone call to the head of the Examiner, congratulating Richardson on the paper's coverage and to expect some souvenirs of Beth Short in the mail. 3 days later, a suspicious manila envelope was discovered addressed to the LA Examiner and other LA papers with individual words that were cut and pasted from newspaper clippings. A large message on the face of the envelope said, "Here's the Dahlia's belongings. Letter to follow." The envelope contained Beth Short's birth certificate, business cards, photographs, and an address book. The packet had been carefully cleaned with gasoline, similarly to how Short's body was cleaned, which led police to suspect the packet had actually been sent by the killer. Several partial fingerprints were lifted from the envelope and sent to the FBI. However, the prints were compromised in transit. Ugh, how frustrating. You actually have evidence and then it gets damaged while it's in custody of the police. Could not be properly analyzed. The same day the packet was received by the examiner, a handbag and a black suede shoe was found on a garbage can a short distance from the crime scene. The items had also been wiped clean with gasoline, destroying any fingerprints. So that's amazing because you don't hear about that. And the fact that somebody was kind of taunting the police and the newspapers, somebody that certainly was the killer. Okay, we'll move forward once again. Let's go ahead and see if we can pull this one up on Google Map as well. So this is a location that I didn't know too much about, which is funny because I used to live right by it. This is the house made famous by the film or the TV series, the season 1 of American Horror Story. As we see some super fans up there. Oh gosh, there's a truck park in front of it. Come on now. So, and again, I lived not too far from here in a haunted house on, was it 1935 8th Avenue in the West Adams area, MidCity. It's also called of Los Angeles. This beautiful old place. This is one that they, getting again behind the scenes a little bit. They knew they could get access to this location, and they loved that it had the tie-in with the famous horror story, American Horror Story. And hey, we're talking about documentaries. You want places that are visually interesting, and obviously this is a visually interesting location, as long as there's not a moving truck parked out front. What do they call it? Murder house in the TV show. So, and there was one time I led a private tour. It was somebody's birthday, and it was right after season 1 came out, and they wanted to make sure that we visited this house. And so we did a drive-by. We got out, took pictures in front of it. But I didn't know at the time that the place actually has its own ghost stories. And, the producers weren't sure if this story was going to stick because there wasn't enough there. They weren't sure if there was enough there. But as I got into it, and you see, I don't have a ton of notes, but it is interesting. There are some ghost stories associated with the place. Built 1908, Alfred Rosenheim, which is why it's nicknamed the Rosenheim Mansion. 2011 was when American Horror Story came out. People have seen a butler carrying a tray up and down the stairs. It was previously used as a convent. When the nuns first arrived, a mover brought in a rocking chair only to come running out and claiming that an apparition had appeared sitting on it after he set it down. Could you imagine that you're carrying an empty, just a piece of furniture? You set it down, and as soon as you sit down, some ghost takes a seat in it right away, right in front of you. The nuns entered and recognized the phantom rocker as a sister who they knew who had died. The nuns sold the house for $3 million in 1994 after it was damaged in an earthquake. There was some quote, I got a quote here. There's some kind of energy that was down there in the basement, and it touched me on the back and it then just evaporated. So I believe that quote came from the people that bought the house later. It was almost so, and they heard some when they first moved in, which tends to be if a place is haunted, it can be. You always hear these stories about renovation is happening, something's being changed or altered, or maybe there's a change in who is staying there. Someone's moving in, moving out, and that picks up activity. So when they first moved in, they had a lot of activity. The current, or at least the first people to move in after the nuns. And I do remember stories about. Here we go. It was almost as if the ceiling had fallen in. So I heard a catastrophe kind of sound. And then there was this strange dragging noise. It was so loud. It woke us up instantly, and we're both looking at each other. What was that? I paraphrased a little bit. So we didn't have a lot there, but still a visual place, an interesting place. And as you know me, I love haunted filming locations. On that note, little segue, as you've seen running across the bottom of the screen here, videos coming up. I do have a little bit more that I'm going to go over here, but videos coming up on this channel. I did a video that should have gone up a couple of days ago, but I'm having some tech issues with it. I drove up the Pacific Coast Highway with a 360-degree camera. This was shortly after the road reopened after the wildfires that just decimated the area this past January. So just very interesting to see what that place looks like now. I've got a video almost finished about Angelus Rosedale Cemetery, which, again, not too far from here. Let's take a look at the map. Let's take a look at the old map again. Angelus Rosedale Cemetery is just a beautiful cemetery that is completely, I feel, overlooked by the more famous Pierce brothers in Westwood, which has so many famous people, including Marilyn Monroe, Heather O'Rourke from Poltergeist, Walter Matthau and Jack Lemmon, Dean Martin is buried there. There's a lot of famous people, and it's a really cool cemetery, as is Hollywood Forever Cemetery. And Hollywood Forever Cemetery has a whole bunch of ghost stories too. I've never heard anything about Pierce brothers. But so those cemeteries, and Forest Lawn, where Jimmy Stewart and Walt Disney and Michael Jackson are buried. Those cemeteries get a lot of attention. And say, yeah, here, not too far away. And I'm going to, since we're into it, typing and talking at the same time, a little hard. I'll show where I live too, and maybe tell a ghost story there. So yeah, see, that's where I used to live, 1935 8th Avenue. We will take a look at that in a second. Why did that go? There we go. Angelus Rosedale Cemetery. I have a video coming out about this cemetery. This is where Hattie McDaniel is buried. Famously the first African-American to ever win an Academy Award. She's got a cenotaph at Hollywood Forever Cemetery, but she's not actually buried there. She's just got something to commemorate her. She wasn't allowed to be buried there because it was a segregated cemetery when she passed away. But she's buried in Angelus Rosedale. The founder of Burbank, Mr. Burbank himself, is buried here. Maria Rasputin, the daughter of the Mad Monk Rasputin, is buried here. She's got a wild story. That's the thing. I think this is the cemetery of stories because there are just so many unique people with just great stories. And I'm excited. I've got the video almost finished that's coming out about that. Here's my old house. And, oh, come on. Son of a. No, that's not going to be it. Here we go. This house, we knew it was haunted from the moment we moved in. Built 1909. This is not in the documentary, so I'm a little off book here. I love this house. Old craftsman house. It's in a re-emerging neighborhood. It's very hidden behind these trees, but that's the house right there. I did some research on this house, and I cannot believe how many times it was in the newspapers. So many people died here. Oddly enough, a lot of the people that died here were from the Midwest. So myself being from Illinois, my roommate was from Wisconsin. We, in hindsight, were lucky to make it out alive. There are just so many famous stories that came out of this one house back in the early 1900s. Again, built 1909. And yes, if I'm saying the place is haunted, I should tell you what's going on. Oh, also, I should also let you know that the house, which you can't tell because it's so hidden, it's 2 stories. The second story was converted into kind of like a hospice treatment kind of area. So we have no idea how many of those people passed away here as well. I would hear footsteps walking down the stairs and then just stopping at that landing. Nothing visual to accompany that. There was a hallway. I think you can find this. I can't remember. You might be able to find a tour of this house on my channel. There was a hallway that people, if all these doors were open, you could look down, it became a hallway, and people would see a shadow figure standing in this intersection, there was a bathroom on one side and my bedroom on the next side. I never saw that, but numerous people saw a dark figure standing there. Also in the basement, people have heard full conversations, phantom conversations, as if 2 other people are in the room, kind of having a muffled conversation, kind of, maybe trying to keep it down. Not quite whispering, but not talking loudly. There was, in the second story, 2 people were having a conversation in a bedroom when a black cat appeared out of nowhere, jumped between them from the floor up onto the bed, ran across the bed and disappeared. These were the types of things that were happening at this house. Oh, and something else that happened at this house. Someone was murdered right in front of it while we were living there. We don't know if it was probably gang related, but we don't have any idea. We heard the gunshots and a kid was killed right there. I mean, it's just, Dark times. Like I said, this area is on the upswing. It was pretty rough when we were living here. These houses are beautiful, and these were old shacks, like from the Wild West, back when I lived here. So anyway, that was our little tangent. Let's get back to talking about what's coming up next. What else is coming up on this channel? I've done videos. So we're talking about LA a lot, but haunted Lake Geneva. Lake Geneva is a place, a tourist town in Wisconsin, a resort town with a long history, not too far away, has a big mafia history. A lot of the Chicago mob would come up as a safe house type area at Lake Como. Harry Houdini is connected to the place. Lots of Native American legends and lore and real history as well. So we do a video, two-part video with an archaeologist that we really dive into that. Madison, Wisconsin has a lot of history as well. And we did a paranormal investigation of this old mansion up on top of a hill. Beautiful place. So we've got a video on that. And like I said, I love talking about places that have a filming history and a ghost story. And I started last year. I started a top 10 countdown of my favorite haunted filming locations. These have to both, again, have some great ghost stories and have been featured prominently in famous movies or TV shows. And then we're counting down and trying to balance those things because they've got to have both elements. And so the top 10, which already came out, the bottom 10, I guess, the bottom 5 of the top 10, Mountain View Mausoleum in Altadena, where I had a really awesome ghost story. The Ambassador Hotel, I call it the Ambassador Hotel area. This is in the Mid-Wilshire area. There's the Gaylord Hotel. There's the Prince. And there's the HMS Bounty, as well as where the Ambassador Hotel itself once stood. Of course, that's where Bobby Kennedy was assassinated. The building itself is gone. It's been torn down. But it's also where the Tower of Terror, the Disney movie, Steve Guttenberg, written and directed by a friend of mine, was shot right there before the building was gone. Number 8 was the Formosa Cafe, as you see at the bottom of the scroll here. 7, Musso and Frank Grill. 6, Culver Studios and Hotel. Made reference to Culver Studios a little bit earlier in this broadcast. Anyway, if you want to check any of that out, you can find it on the website, on this channel. And go to the website too, whatsyourghoststory.com. Okay, so what do we have? We've got 2 stories left, 3 stories left. Wow, I'm gonna pick up the pace because this is going longer than I thought it would. So Comedy Store in Ciro's. This is on Sunset Boulevard. Love the Comedy Store. Love stand-up comedy. But the place has a mafia history. It started out as a place that was a safe house, not a safe house, but it was it was run by the mob. And by the way, I just have to also mention, I just went to the Mob Museum in Las Vegas, and I highly recommend it. I love mafia history. I love crime stories like that. If anybody is interested in that kind of stuff, there's a lot of overlap, of course, between LA and Hollywood too. You have Bugsy Siegel. You've got Billy Wilkerson, who was a front man and a money man for a lot of illicit things. So we're going to get into Billy Wilkerson here because he's involved in the Comedy Store. And he was very much involved with early Vegas. He also was the guy that started the Hollywood Reporter, which was my industry trade magazine of choice forever. But the Comedy Store, again, it was this lavish nightclub called Ciro's back in the day. And it was a place that Bugsy Siegel hung out. Definitely a place even more associated with Mickey Cohen. Let's see, what do I have here? William, I call him Billy Wilkerson, real estate developer. Billy's List helped initiate the Red Scare. So yeah, he's got a lot of strikes against him. He discovered Lana Turner, celebs who frequented Ciro's, Marilyn Monroe, Humphrey Bogart, Lauren Bacall. I mean, it just goes on and on. You could see this list. And I'm just having a flashback to my interview where the producers say, give us the list of some celebrities who hung out at Ciro's. And I just total blank. I couldn't come up with any celebrity name. Like, oh, everyone. Because it was literally everyone, but I couldn't come up with a single name. I was, kind of on the spot. But you see the list there. Filed for bankruptcy in 1979, various rock clubs through the 1960s. I'm always curious because we have all of these ghost stories associated with it now, since it was the Comedy Store in 1972. But did people have any experiences there when it was a rock club? Or maybe it was too rowdy for people to notice the more subtle things that could happen during a haunting? And anytime you're talking about mafia stories, and there's a great one just down the street here, the Wonder Bar in Madison, Wisconsin, associated with the terrible Toohey family. It was a safe house for John Dillinger. I'm off target again. I just love talking about this stuff. But, whether we're researching a place like that or a place like the Comedy Store, you don't, unless the place was raided and had an extensive undercover operation going on, you don't really know what happened. And we're talking about going back into the 50s and earlier, where you really, so now you have time working against you as well. You have fewer witnesses that could come out and share things. But one of the stories is that Cohen had an upstairs office, and he had basically a peephole that you could shoot through that went into the stairwell. And it's rumored that he would call for someone to come up for a meeting, and in the stairwell is where he would be gunned down, and then possibly the body brought to the basement or disposed of some way. But still, is it true? We can't ever know the answer to that. The basement has all sorts of legend and lore associated with it as well. Illicit things going on down there, medical procedures, if you know what I mean. We don't really know how much of that is real or just talk. Legendary comics like Richard Pryor, Robin Williams, Chevy Chase, Jerry Seinfeld, film stars like Jim Carrey, Roseanne Barr, Jay Leno, Arsenio Hall. Okay, I guess that was just a list of people who rose to fame partially because of doing time at the Comedy Store. Surprised I didn't mention David Letterman, because Leno's on here. How do I mention Leno and Letterman? They both were young comics starting out at the same time, playing at the Comedy Store. Okay, so objects move a lot here. Chairs get stacked up in the middle of an aisle. A setup room gets reset, like ashtrays are put away, tablecloths refolded. That's amazing. Blake Clark. If you know who Blake Clark is, if you don't know who Blake Clark is, he's a stand-up comic, but he's also a character actor. He's you might know him from Waterboy, that Adam Sandler movie. He's done a lot of TV as well. He's the gym teacher in Community. Anyway, he's a recognizable guy, recognizable face. But according to him, he was on stage doing his stand-up routine when the bar stool that was on stage, the seat started spinning and then was dragged 20 feet. Now, could you imagine these paranormal events happening, not only up close and personal, but in front of a live audience? That's the kind of energy we're talking about here. Let's see. He heard the piano being played by someone who wasn't there, and then also saw an ashtray thrown at an antagonizing employee. Multiple comics have reported being lifted up by some unseen force, maybe like in a bear hug kind of a thing, while they're on stage, including Sam Kinison. If you know comedy from the 80s, Sam Kinison was not a little guy. He was big. He was big in personality, but also in stature. And he was lifted, again, in front of a live audience. The stage lights have been known to flicker when mentioning the names of deceased comics. Leslie Jones' story. I don't remember what the Leslie Jones story is. When I was making these notes for myself, I would have known what that was. So we'll have to look that one up. But Leslie Jones, you might know from Saturday Night Live, is where she got big. She was in Ghostbusters. I love that the 2016 Ghostbusters involved her as a historian. All the other Ghostbusters, the original Ghostbusters, none of those guys, they're all scientists, no historians. And you got to have the historian. So that's definitely something the 2016 version got right. All right. Manager saw someone in a tweed 1940s jacket walk past him and into his office. An employee who was already in the office saw nothing. Gus, is what they nicknamed him, seemed to act like a security guard in the main showroom. Seen dressed in 40s clothing, has been seen inspecting the crowd and keeping an eye on stage before disappearing. So, you would imagine you have the mob bosses working there. And there's if you want to get into the nitty gritty on LA Mafia, there's questions over were Bugsy Siegel and then later Mickey Cohen, were they really bosses? Because LA was run by the New York Mafia. Pardon. And those guys were kind of put in charge of overseeing LA. There was an LA mob boss named Jack Dragna. I've heard it said both ways, who was very antagonistic. New York did not see eye to eye with him. I'm surprised there weren't more mafia. There wasn't more mafia war between New York and LA. But Jack would not have had a chance because the New York mafia was so huge and powerful. And so you imagine, Mickey has an office upstairs. Mickey was Mr. Sunset Strip. He had an office at his haberdashery, his clothing store down the street. He frequented the Trocadero. He survived multiple hits on his life, bombings as well at his house in Beverly Hills. But he was definitely Mr. Sunset Strip. So it makes that totally checks out that he would be hanging out there. And if he's hanging out in his office at Ciro's, there's going to be people, henchmen's not really the right word, but bodyguards keeping an eye on everybody that's having a good time. They're just out having drinks and dinner and dancing, but who knows who's going to walk through that door. So it makes sense that there would be some security guard type people making sure that the wrong people didn't get too close to Mickey. Gus, also nicknamed Francis, let's see. I guess one of the claims was that Gus or Francis was a hitman who worked there and who was also later killed there, and that he's continuing to look over the place. I don't know where that comes from. It could be a psychic saying it. I'd still like to verify. It could be somebody got that over a spirit box. That's not proof, but that's the story as we have it right now. Okay, the entity case. I've done a lot on this. Oh, and I do know that they used the soundbite for me talking about the history of Culver City, which is really dark. Culver City today is just one of the most beautiful towns, one of the best parts of LA, and it's cleaned up. There's lots of nightlife, lots of restaurants. It's a fun place to go. If you're a fan of Arrested Development, they shoot outside around Culver City a lot. And if you just if you can get the vibe of what the feel of Arrested Development is, that's the vibe of Culver City. It's a nice place. So I wrote this up. Culver City is a charged city. This is before ChatGPT, by the way. So there are many actively haunted sites here, including hotels, restaurants, and even one of the original film studios, and of course, a house with a very, very haunted history. I always think it's good to look at history, both recent and ancient, when talking about a haunted place. And Culver's history is exceptionally bloody. The region was home to the Tongva Gabrielino Native Americans. These people were massacred by waves of Spanish, Mexican, and then Euro-American invaders by slavery, disease, relocation, imprisonment, and a war of extermination, including paid bounty for dead natives. So again, can that get more dark? No. In my opinion, no, that cannot get more dark. And that was the foundation of Culver City's ancient history. We jump to much more recent, and when it became incorporated by Harry Culver as Culver City, he established it as a sundown town where minorities weren't allowed to even be in there after dark, and they certainly couldn't own land, but they can't even be within city limits after dark. So people that had houses and generations of life in Culver City, they were just kicked out, left to figure it out on their own. So again, lots of darkness to this place that today is very light and beautiful and nice. Culver City is also the resting place of everyone from Bela Lugosi, film's most iconic OG vampire, to Sharon Tate. Lighter personalities included John Candy, Mo Howard of the Three Stooges, the original Uncle Fester, Jackie Coogan. And I always have to point out that he was also Jackie Coogan, Cousin It, creepy Cousin It. Uncle Fester was also the kid from the Charlie Chaplin movie, The Kid, the adorable little kid. That guy grew up to be Uncle Fester. Let's see. Buried here as is Wizard of Oz's Tin Man, Jack Haley. Great dancer, Jack Haley. The story of the Entity House is one I rarely tell because it is so intensely dark. And for YouTube, I really can't get into the details. You'll be able to read some of it here, I'm sure. I really wrote this up. I just love juxtaposition. You think of when you think of an extremely haunted house, you think of this old Victorian house on the top of the hill with the lightning behind it and the dead trees in the foreground. This is just this tiny little house right off the 405. It looks kind of cute. post-war era. I mean, it actually isn't. It's 1920s, but it kind of seems like those cookie cutter houses that popped up everywhere after World War II. And it's completely not isolated. It's right off one of the busiest highways in the planet. In 1974, a woman named Doris Bither had more than she could handle and reached out to UCLA parapsychologist Barry Taff and Carrie Gaynor. Let's see. I love this part. I'll read this. She was a single mom moving here with her 3 young boys from Santa Monica to Culver City. Shortly after moving in, she got a knock at the door and was surprised to see an old Mexican woman standing there. The woman was stone-faced and had a message for her. You need to get out. I used to live in this old house back when it was just a farm and I was a little girl. There is something very evil here. This place is haunted. You need to get out. So something that's amazing also, the Entity case. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that movie from I want to say early 80s. Oh, okay, here we go. First comment. I'll pop this in right now. The docs are great. And yes, David Omen's house has some stuff going on. My wife did a private tour with Scott Markus. Awesome. I love Scott Markus. We got to experience it firsthand. Keep up the great work, James. Thank you so much, Blazer 1974, James. So, what did your wife experience? I'm curious. Your wife did a private tour. I'm glad you got to check it out. It's a private home. It's pretty cool that David opens it up for people to come and see it on occasion. And I'm sure he'll continue doing it as long as there's interest, and there should always be interest because that place needs to be studied. Let's see, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so talking about the Entity case, people rightfully and understandably, they focus on all the stuff, all the darkness that happened, which was kind of a poltergeist case. It seemed like a poltergeist case where a woman was being attacked, repeatedly, violently, physically attacked, which happens a lot in the most extreme poltergeist cases. And often it's someone's own psyche kind of manifesting itself in a way, and then doing harm to the person, the originator. What do they call it? The affected person, essentially. So it seems very much like that. And it kind of checks out even more because Doris and the kids already had paranormal experiences around them. Objects were moving by themselves, even an apparition attempting to manifest. That's what was happening when they were living in Santa Monica at their previous house. So that tells me that the house itself was not haunted, that Doris had some sort of an attachment, or maybe something that somebody in the family did. But then you have this on top of it. Maybe it's both. Maybe it's combining. Doris had her own thing going on, and then she ends up moving into a house that is already haunted. And that just makes things even worse. So, as you see, I don't go into a lot of detail here. But I think it's all worth exploring that, according to Doris's son, Brian, he much later shared that Doris was disowned by her parents in high school due to her rebelliousness. She sought refuge in common places like drugs and alcohol to cope, but went beyond that, incorporating seances and Ouija boards as part of her escapism. So I think that's really fascinating that Doris was coming from a negative place already, and then she opens all of these doorways, and who knows what she let in. And I don't want to victim blame here, but did she have a hand in some of these attacks that were going on? The documentary does a really good job talking about exactly what was happening, all the different things that we're seeing. So like I said, I have to stress it, that Doris was physically violently attacked repeatedly in front of witnesses, including her own kids, which I can only imagine how traumatizing that is. UCLA parapsychologists come to investigate, and they are on the fence a lot as well. Like, is this legitimate? What's going on here? Is this in her mind? There's just, more and more factors to consider about what's going on in Doris's life. But over time, and especially in hindsight, Barry Taff especially has really come out to say that he believes, not in everything that he was told, but he believed that she was the victim of these attacks, and that was, something was actually happening there. And again, they had not just those 2 investigators, but sometimes classrooms full of people that would come in and photograph and get strange images on camera, or see things start to manifest right in the middle of the room in front of them all. So there was absolutely something going on there. What is in the movie? It gets crazy, of course, as you have to have a Hollywood ending for a Hollywood movie, where they do this big experiment in a gymnasium, and it goes off the rails for sure. That didn't happen. But what did happen was that she moved to Texas to get away from everything that was going on, to get away from her life in LA. And according to her brother or her sons, activity continued through the rest of her life, or at least immediately upon moving to Texas, the activity continued, which I think, that's something that doesn't get talked about enough when it comes to Amityville. Amityville, people always say that, well, hey, this family moved out and then nobody's talked about the house being haunted since, so they must have been faking it. Well, you talk to the family, as I have Christopher Quarantino specifically, the family was haunted. It wasn't the house. They moved away and they kept dealing with stuff, not as extreme maybe, but they lived a supernaturally affected life. So no, it wasn't the house. It was the family. Okay, so Peg Entwistle and the Hollywood Sign. And I've already done a really big video about Peg Entwistle. Oh, actually, it's been throttled because I said the S word in it. So you need to be logged in and you need to be over 18 to see it. I need to re-upload a censored version so that everybody can see it. But check it out if you can. Peg Entwistle and the Hollywood Sign. Everybody knows this story. Peg Entwistle was a troubled actress who was having a tough go of it in LA. One day decided, as the story goes, one day goes up to the Hollywood Sign and jumps off the letter H on Hollywood, ending it all. Well, there's a lot more to that story. And I think that's always important to me, to make sure that Peg Entwistle's story is told accurately and correctly, sensitively, remembering that she's not just a ghost, she was a real life person. And Peg was, people always tell the story that she got cast in RKO's 13 Women, and then her part got cut out of the final film, and then so she was too depressed to go on. And that's not it at all. She had a lot going on in her life. She was going through a very messy divorce. I can never remember the names. Here we go. Robert Keith, who would go on to act opposite Brando in Guys and Dolls and The Wild One. He was the main character in The Fugitive. So she was married to a guy who had a son that she didn't know about till after the divorce was over. Brian, who was in Family Affair, Hardcastle and McCormick, and dozens of other films. But as a little kid, she didn't even know he existed until after they divorced, that he had this other child and now was suing her for child care, is it alimony? And she didn't have the money for this. So as if a divorce wasn't enough, she was also dealing with that. On top of that, she came from the East Coast. And when at this time in history, leaving your theater troops behind, it was a one-way ticket. If you're going to go try to make it in Hollywood, New York was tired of all of their good talent leaving. So they said, if you go back, we're not going to be your safety net. So it's a one-way ticket when you leave. And she was struggling in LA, in Hollywood, but not as dire, I don't think, as people were saying, as people often make it out to be. So, but still, there was a lot going on in her life. And as you see, her note that she left behind right here is just so so heartbreaking. I'm afraid I'm a coward. I'm sorry for everything. If I'd done this a long time ago, it would have saved a lot of pain. PE. So I always want to talk about all this because people talk about it like it was a rash decision she made. No, she knew what she was going to do. That doesn't make it right or anything like that, but it wasn't some ill thought out thing, ending, of course. But she also, on top of all of this, she had a 2.5 mile walk from her uncle's house where she was staying on Beechwood Canyon Drive up to through Griffith Park up to the Hollywood Sign. So she had all this time to be thinking it over as well on this death hike that she did. She was not identified for 2 days. It was a big mystery of who this woman was. And yes, everybody always shares this, which is interesting. Her uncle received a letter from RKO shortly after her death offering her another film role. And people usually use that as like, oh, if she had only hung on for a little bit longer. Like that wasn't everything that was in her life that was giving her troubles. It wasn't just her acting career. So yeah, since her death, people have seen a woman jumping off the letter H, a residual haunting, a replay of an event. They've seen it from Griffith Park. They've seen it from the Griffith Observatory. Police fire rescue has been called to go try to get to this person that just jumped off the letter H, only to find no body. So it's a replay of an event, but I did go up there on the 81st anniversary of her death with Gula. Shout out to Richard Carradine, who used to run that. Wonderful guy, another great local LA Hollywood historian. So we would do a hike on the anniversary to go up to the sign. You can't get directly to the sign, it's fenced off. But I waited for the rest of the people to leave. There's just a small group of 4 of us in total, myself and 3 others. And coincidentally, RKO Studios was bought out. Its film library was bought out by Paramount Studios. And so now the one film that Peg Entwistle was in, made by RKO, now owned by Paramount, one of those 3 people in our group was an employee of Paramount. And I asked, trying to appeal to the actress, hey, our friend Gabby here, she works at Paramount, still a major studio doing big, important projects. Would you be interested in meeting more people who work at Paramount? And I was using a voice recorder. And I was holding it between the 4 of us. This is all on video, and this video is on YouTube. And in the moment of me asking that question, I heard a whisper. I couldn't hear a word, but I heard a whisper. Couldn't make anything out. Upon replaying the audio, you could clear as day hear a feminine voice say yes. Not like some of those other EVPs that are all whispery, breathy. It's hard to make out. This is just a woman just saying yes, clearly, clear as day. And on the video replay, you can see that none of us are talking. It's silent, but it picked up on that recorder. And I think even more harrowing to me was for the next minute and a half, you could hear someone just slowly breathing in and out into that microphone as if their lips are almost pressed right up to it. Wild, just weird. It gave me so many goosebumps and chills when I was listening to that for the very first time. And again, you can see on video that I'm holding it in front, in the middle of a group of 4 people at about waist level. So our breath is nowhere near where the recorder is, but someone was there. I think there's a chance that it was Peg Entwistle on the anniversary. And I'm not saying that she's doing that. I almost slipped. Thank you, YouTube, for making it hard to just talk. I don't think she's going up there doing that to herself over and over again. But maybe she's got a residual haunting going on. And then she also has a consciousness. Maybe she's up there all the time. Maybe she's up there just on the anniversary. Maybe it's sporadic. Who knows? Take that down now. Anyway, thank you all for coming along on this, more than an hour and a half long talk. If you haven't checked out Famously Haunted on Tubi, please do so. They did such a great job with it. Very proud of the work they did. I was just happy to be part of it. If you want to talk about anything at all in the world of the paranormal, if it's LA, if it's anywhere in the world, I've traveled across America to Ireland, Portugal, always with an eye out for strange and weird. Also, I've got the podcast, The Fantastic Story Society. I have a book that just came out, What's Your Ghost Story, Volume 1. Some of my greatest hits over my last quarter of a century of telling ghost stories. Thank you all for watching so much. I hope to talk to you in the comments. And hey, have a great Halloween season.